So let's talk briefly about what personal selling is. I mean, you can see the slide. You can read the words for yourself, and some of it's very, very obvious. So I want to take you maybe a level down beneath the obvious. As you can see here, it says personal selling is the company's link to the customers. Well, that is true, but I'd like to think this through a little bit. Especially if you think about selling something that's invisible, and such as a service, such as an offering that the customer cannot see for themselves, then when we talk about the link to the customer and creating a customer's perception of the company, then you have to understand that the salesperson is really the only representation that the buyer, the potential buyer, might have of the company, of the offering, and of the solution. So it is really important that when the buyer is looking at the seller, that they see value, that they can trust the person, that they understand what it is that they're going to be buying from the organization. So when we use words like is the company's link to customers, it seems very obvious, but there's a lot to that. And you can see the words for yourself that in terms of relationship, a lot of persuading people to buy is less about actually persuading them that you have a good opportunity or a good solution, but enabling the customer to think through what it is that they want and to see for themselves what value there is in the offering that you have. So it is the link to the customer, but in some ways it's the only, in some situations it's the only way that the customer can really get an appreciation for what the selling organization is selling. And this is changing even more when you think about the impact of technology. I mean, for many years we've had this model, and I'm sure some of you have seen this before. This is an adaptation of Michael Porter's original value chain. And you can see at the bottom it's what you think of as the core function of a business, when you think about having a product and marketing it and then selling it and then implementing it and then providing ongoing service and support. And this model has existed like this for a long time. I mean, you can see it's 35 years. And we believe that this has been the way historically that people have understood what it is that a company is offering. The role of marketing typically has been to create awareness, to generate interest. And the role of selling has typically been to take that interest and to move it on to the next level and to create preference and to then get somebody to actually buy. That's how we've thought about it in the main. Marketing is primarily awareness and selling is primarily about preference and the persuasion to get somebody to do something. And for many years we've had what's been known as the chasm between marketing and selling. Don't know if any of you have done an internship in your recent past where maybe you've worked for a marketing function or you maybe worked for a selling function, and typically what you hear are the two sides fighting against each other. Marketing saying that selling doesn't make use of all the leads they're generating. Salespeople always complain about the poor quality of leads that marketing is actually generating. And so we've had this chasm, and for many years we've been trying to fix this and talk about how you bridge the two functions. Well, in reality, we don't need to do this anymore because the world is doing it for us. And we'll talk a little bit more about this later on. But if you think now about a very simple product, we sometimes call this an intrinsic value or a transactional offering. What's happened is that we don't really have a separation of marketing and selling. In fact, for very simple products, we don't even need salespeople anymore. It's all able to be done by technology. If you think of Amazon.com as an example, and just think through what it is that you're able to do from creating awareness for yourself, for generating your own interest, for having a preference for a specific product, and being able to then hit single-click buying. Basically, you can do everything from a seller's perspective, from a company perspective. For a simple product, you can now do everything with technology. You do not need salespeople. And the flip side is now also true. For very complicated offerings, we sometimes call these extrinsic value or consultative offerings, technology is not really the thing that's going to help somebody choose what they buy. They need the relationship. They need to have this personal interaction with the seller. And so what we're finding is that it's not the separation between marketing and sales anymore. For intrinsic or transactional products, marketing and sales is now typically owned by the marketing function inside an organization. And for complicated consultative products, marketing and sales is now owned by the selling function inside the organization. So we're seeing a bifurcation, we're seeing a split in a very, very different way. I mean, the impact of this is significant. In the United States alone, in the last 10 years, we've lost just about 7 million salespeople in the transactional space because their jobs, if you will, have been replaced by the use of technology and automation. So we're living in a very interesting time. And especially with the new generation and the way that people like you, for example, are choosing to buy, companies are struggling with this. I actually quite envy you. I think you're going to be going out into the market at the perfect time because you understand something that many organizations do not, and you understand how you buy. And I think many organizations are really going to value that talent. But let's just position what selling is. Selling is really about taking the awareness and the interest that somebody has and then taking them to the next level where they feel very comfortable in making the buying decision. And for simple product, that can almost be done automatically these days through the use of technology. So hopefully that's given you a view as to how selling today fits in compared with marketing. And it is changing and it will continue to change. Why is it important? Well, it's very often the company's single largest operating expense, and that's significant. If you look at a company like Oracle employing something like 3,000 salespeople, and each one of those is earning maybe $200,000, $300,000, it's a massive expense. So it is something that needs to be managed and considered in a very, very powerful way. The interesting thing I find about selling, though, is that even though it's the company's single largest operating expense, very often the decisions about how that money is spent are made at the lowest level. When I was a salesperson for Hewlett Packard, I decided what I did. And I and all of my colleagues left the office every day. Nobody really knew what we did. Provided we provided the results, then everybody was happy. I don't think there's anywhere else in an organization where the single largest operating expense is effectively managed by the lowest level person inside the company. The other statistic that might be a surprise for you is that about 1 person in 10 in the total labour force is involved in sales. I mean, that's again a significant proportion of people that are in the world of work. The last statistic I saw, something like 32% of people who graduate with a bachelor's as their terminal degree, about 32% of people will then move into some form of sales job. Now, it might not be called sales. In banking, it might be a relationship manager. In fact, there are many companies that don't call their salespeople. But in terms of thinking about the person that has the relationship with the buyer, 1 person in 10 in the labour force is involved in sales. So sales is a significant part of making business work. And I am biased, I appreciate and admit that, but my view is if you don't generate business, you have no need for any other function in the organization. So driving top line is what selling is about, and if you don't drive top line, you basically don't have a business. So in a moment we'll talk about the different types of selling and how they fit into the modern world.